Well, Mark Voyger is a senior fellow at the Center for European Policy Analysis and a director of the master's program in global management at the American University in Kiev. He joins me now from Warsaw. Mark, thank you for talking to NewsHour. This, let's call it an assassination because that's what it looks like, is not the only instance we have seen lately of Ukraine deliberately and successfully targeting some of Russia's top experts. Just recently, a Russian weapons expert who helped develop cruise missiles used in the war had been assassinated in a forest in the Moscow region. How worried are the Russians that the Ukrainians seem to be able to not only get access to these parts of the country, but successfully kill some of the most important elements of the Russian military?
Good evening, Joel. Thank you for having me. Well, first, let's call it by its real name. It's a well-deserved comeuppance of an officer who has committed many crimes through his recent deeds during the war against Ukraine. Many people in the West think that this is Putin's war. Unfortunately, there are many like this general, commanding officers in the chain of command, thousands of them who are executing criminal orders, most of them directed against civilians, which is an international crime, of course, but also against Ukraine's soldiers. The weapon systems that were used against those soldiers under the orders of this particular General Kirillov. So the Russians must be worried, must be very concerned that Ukraine is actually able to penetrate their vaunted security system and destroy not only Kirillov but many others. For going back a couple of years in the center of Moscow, apparently. That shows serious omissions on the part of those Russian security services, but also that the Ukrainians are operating, really, in this case, with I would call impunity, and then the Russian officers involved or the other those who commit crimes, must understand that they're not unreachable, that they can become targets. Sadly, this is the reality in a situation whereby all these criminals are hiding behind the sovereignty of the regime. So there is slim chances that any international court, any international justice, any ruling would actually be able to reach and grab them and sentence them properly. The only chance of doing this would be, as you remember, the Yugoslav wars when the regime of Milosevic fell, and so his general sent to The Hague. Now this is not in the offing yet, and therefore Ukraine is taking in its own hands the punishment of this type of criminals in Russia itself.
Yeah, and let's be clear that the Russians have said that they will retaliate to this latest attack. I just want to also ask you, Mark, in terms of the significance of this attack, in terms of what it represents for Russian military strategy, we know that the Russians have superior numbers when it comes to frontline troops, but when it comes to experience at the top, the people that are leading the Russians in trying to prosecute this war, how much of a loss is Igor Kirillov going to be for them?
I think it's a significant loss. Kirillov was actually has been implicated with, as I said, the usage of chemical agents against Ukrainian soldiers. Being in charge of such a massive surge in the Russian armed forces, obviously nuclear, chemical, biological defense, means that he was, considered an expert in his job, in his position. So I would imagine that would be a serious loss. Not to mention also that he was a major kind of a promoter, propagator of disinformation, claiming that Ukraine had American labs developing biological agents spread by geese, as ridiculous as it may seem, and also that Ukraine was developing dirty bombs. So here we have a situation where an officer, obviously being an expert, but also is part of this the Kremlin's propaganda machine. So that must be an important loss for Russia.
All right, Mark, thank you so much for that analysis. Mark Voyger from the American University in Kiev.